And the chrome-domed Maverick Genius, or whatever it was, is here now.
With side salad.
How is it chrome-domed?
Chrome dome.
No. Tell me, this theory about difficult times making interesting music, do you buy it?
I think difficult times make for good audiences, because I think when the times are difficult, people are much more interested in art. They're much more interested in seeing things, in being challenged in new ways, in finding exciting new feelings. And in comfortable times, people aren't very much.
Do you think it's happening now?
Yes, I do. I think there's much more live performance than there's been ever in my life. And, of course, there are all these new arts that are appearing now, a lot of them internet-based or app-based, which really are very, very exciting. And I think that's the beginning of the future. And I think, you know, the conventional art forms are sort of losing their funding in some respects, but creativity it's a little bit like water. It sort of seeps out wherever there's an outlet, you know.
And you're talking about musical expression of creativity here, or is it broader than music?
Broader, I think, yes. You know, there are a lot of things going on now that you have to look at all of the new art forms a little bit like, you have to imagine it's 1911, you're looking at the first films that are made. It's very difficult to imagine when you see a sort of flickering train going into a station that's going to turn into Martin Scorsese or Citizen Kane or something like that. But there are lots of new art forms that are appearing now.
What are these art forms?
Well, for instance, there's a whole lot of things based around apps, you know, the little iPad. Now the fact that everybody carries a computer in their pocket means that an artist has a new place to work, and a lot of them are taking advantage of it, including me, actually.
Are you taking advantage of it at a visual level, a musical level, or what?
Both of those, I think, yes. I think...
so somehow it's all scrambled up together?
Yes. That's one of the things that's going on, actually, that the distinctions between the arts are starting to break down, that everything's much more porous. It's possible to work in a new landscape that is both visual, musical, textual, if you like.
Everything's porous and everything's available too, isn't it?
Everything's available, including the complete history of recorded art. That's one of the other things. So something I notice with young musicians is that their palette is enormously broad. You know, they're quite capable of bringing in Dave Brubeck and Bob Marley and Talking Heads into one piece of music and collaging them together. So one of the problems an artist faces is to decide, what form am I working in? What am I actually doing? I didn't have that problem in a way. I sort of inherited the idea of being a particular kind of musician, and I expanded it a bit, but I never was looking at 50 years past of music as my palette.
And they're all equally available, and they're all kind of considered equally worthwhile, whether it be Dave Brubeck or Beethoven or whoever.
Well, I think, do you know this term open source? It refers to a way of constructing things, of creating things by sharing them. I think, in a way, the whole cultural world has sort of gone open source, so that everybody's making things, making them available to be shared. As soon as they're digital, they're very shareable. It's very easy to bind together things that are already digital. And this idea of open source, which sort of loses the idea of the artist as the primary controlling individual, and the artist becomes more like a member of a commune. So artists are working more and more in communities, and I think people are as well.
But is there a particular type of sound that emerges from that synthesis at the end? I mean, in the way that you can associate punk, for example, with a particular time in our history?
Well, I think, though I don't like to blow my own trumpet, that this idea of generative music that I talk about is one of the things that will prove to be a feature of the future. The idea of the composer being more like a gardener than an architect. You know, the vision of the composer traditionally is somebody who has the whole piece in their head and writes it down. Whereas I think more and more what people are doing now is assembling sets of musical seeds and planting them, watching them develop, watching them evolve, both electronically and through sharing with other composers and musicians. So I think we're in Cameron talks about the big society, but actually it's here. We're already doing it, in fact. We won't recognize it for a long time, but there's a sort of exponential expansion of the thing that I think Matt Ridley identified in his book, The Rational Optimist, the idea of the growth of a collective mind, the idea of people becoming more and more intelligent by sharing in a larger and larger collective mind. Do you know that our brains are actually getting smaller?
That's an alarming thought on which to end, I think. Brian, thanks.